Hello, my name is Evan Rose. I'm running for Maine State Senate. This is the fourth of my video logs or vlogs during our third week of our coronavirus pandemic lockdown. And I am running for this office with the hope of expanding, I think, the kind of dialogue we have in politics. I think this pandemic is already shaping up to be a psychologically and socially transformative experience. I've been delighting in some of the insight gained from memes and exchanges on social media. One of the better ones I've seen recently is that we're not able to meet our carbon goals, our emissions goals, without transforming the economy. That's the world. And then nature says, here, have a virus, practice. I would like to be a different kind of politician, at least speak politically in different terms than what we're used to. One of the things you will never hear me talk about is extolling the virtues of jobs. That Maine needs to bring more jobs, or this more jobs and jobs, as if it's some sort of, bromide of our times. Oh, jobs. Well, I've had some pretty crappy jobs in my life. I've had a lot of different jobs in my life, actually. Many of them were pretty soul-crushing jobs. And so anytime that I hear this word jobs, in the context of, something we ought to pursue as policy, I will always want to break it open. And break it open to separate the aspect of the jobs that is things that we like from the parts that we don't like. And I found a very good tool or mechanism device to do this is the Japanese term and concept of Ikigai. I'm not a scholar in Japanese, but my understanding is that this term literally means your reason for doing anything, kind of your reason for getting up in the morning and going to work. At some point after this pandemic and lockdown is over, we're going to find ourselves in that position of, once again, the workaday life. And Ikigai is, I think, a very useful way to break this down. Ikigai can be seen as it's depicted often as a Venn diagram. Venn diagrams are those intersecting circles that sort of a logical construct where certain things that are in common share an overlapping space. In this case, it's a Venn diagram of 4 overlapping circles. And those 4 overlapping circles are: one, that you are good at the job. Another is that you like the job. A third is that the world needs the job. And the fourth is that you make money at the job. Now, most of us obviously go to work because we need to make money. These other motivations are important as well because these tap into, sort of the Western or American or Protestant or whatever you want to call it, or whatever it has been called, the work ethic. We have a very strong work ethic that we like in Maine and in the United States. And this has been touted as, it's been a sort of a focus of some culture war battles. Oh, you're going to be lazy if we end up getting into a socialist environment. Everyone's going to be lazy. Oh, you have all these unemployment checks, and it's just going to be laziness. Or we can't give people relief during this pandemic crisis because, as I've heard some conservative pundits claim and politicos claim, it's just going to make us lazy. This pandemic is going to make us all lazy. Well, here I am making signs. Earlier today, I made bricks. Yes, I make bricks from leftover grout that we get on the job. I cut open little milk cartons and save all that leftover grout in thin set and make a brick. And I have done this for years, and I've made probably a couple hundred bricks. So I use these bricks as little pavers. It sort of makes a little Minecraft looking square path or mosaic. Kind of pretty, kind of crafty. I've done a lot of jobs that are not paid. I've pretty much worked most of my life in industries that don't pay very well at all. Museum work, academia. And I mean, they can pay well, I suppose, but I certainly didn't get that. Because for me, those jobs were jobs not to make money so much as to follow a passion. So that was one of the other circles in the Venn diagram that is Ikigai. Some things I've gotten good at. Some things I really loved, and some things were really good for the world. I just happened not to be in fields that tend to make a whole lot of money. So I think that Ikigai is a pretty important concept that should be applied anytime we talk about jobs, anytime we talk about work. I think it's really important to separate the good aspects of work, the Protestant work ethic or Western or American whatever work ethic, from the sort of workaday drudgery, the toil, the labor that that is associated with such terms as or expressions as gotta go to work to pay the bills. Well, so that's why with Ikigai, I would like to, I would expand that one lobe of it, that one circle that is about making money, and break that down into two, I guess, hemispheres. One would be, does it make money for you to accrue wealth? You know, for you to have expanded options in your life, to maybe get that extra thing, that extra vacation that might otherwise be a staycation, but, you know, oh, I'd like to, you know, hop on a plane and go to Italy, or hop on a train and, you know, see, I don't know, across Canada or something like that. Do some kind of fun luxury thing, you know, like to go out to dinner, treat my friends and family, you know, to a nice dinner out, you know, that sort of thing, accrual of wealth. Or is it just subsistence? Are you doing it just to pay the bills? I mean, that's one of the saddest things I think to hear is, I got to go to work to pay the bills. And certainly one of the saddest jobs that I've ever had was working in a mill in Oregon, making U-finish furniture. It was just so depressing. Big factory floor, big buzzers going off. Time for your mandatory 10-minute cigarette break. I didn't smoke, but the people who did smoke would go out there and just talk about the factory and how you know they might aspire to be a swing shift manager in a year or two, or you know, a little gossip and so forth. And I just thought how small that life is, how small that world is, how dehumanizing this whole environment is. That is not the kind of work that is fulfilling or humanizing or enriching at all. And that should be something that we never have to face ever again. And it's actually kind of possible for us never to have to face that ever again. So I'm going to turn now to a little second thought about this. One of the jobs I had in a past life, or one of the careers I had intended to follow, was in secondary education. I went to college and got a couple degrees. One of them was in secondary education, earth science secondary education. And I learned a little bit about the history of secondary education in the United States. And it was developed in the former progressive era in the turn of the last century. And much of what we have as the core curriculum of secondary education has been criticized as sort of elitist in the sense that it was developed by a group, the National Education Association, the NEA, starting in 1898, with a committee of 10. And the committee of 10 pretty much developed our core curriculum with the siloed subjects of, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic, that sort of thing. And the goal for that was college preparation. There was a revisitation of the goals of secondary education as an extension of this progressive movement. And the idea was, rather than focus on the development of an individual in preparation for college, the idea was how to make the public education at the secondary level more democratic, and focusing on the development of the individual, the student, and what the role the high school would play in a number of sort of, I don't know, you guess you could call them supracurricular goals or principles. And these became the 7 principles of secondary education. Now, this is all leading to something, so I don't want to lose you right now. These 7 principles of public education included worthy citizenship, for one thing, worthy home life, for another thing. What would it be? Physical, health, physical health. Command of fundamental processes. This would be the curricular part of it. Your ethical character. Make sure that you're, being nice to people. The other one is worthy use of leisure time. Now, some of these phrases or ways that these principles are worded may seem a bit antiquated. And I remember when I was introduced to this 7 cardinal principles, I myself thought, worthy use of leisure time. So this was in 1918, and I thought, well, what would be worthy use of leisure time in 1918? Was it talking about lawn tennis or something? And I kind of dismissed it as, maybe not very important. But since that time, I've kind of come around to understanding that worthy use of leisure time is probably the most important of all of these. And I say that because leisure time is something that we should expect to have more and more of. And when it comes to work, I mean, if all we view human purpose as being is to work, in other words, in political dialogues, we use this term again, jobs, as if that's some sort of, final goal in life, as if that's, everything else is going to follow suit. And I get it. You need jobs, to pay the bills because suffering kind of sucks. But honestly, right now during this pandemic, during this lockdown, many of us, most of us perhaps, are being really kind of forced into a position of finding some worthy use of forced leisure time. I can't say it's actually fun leisure time for everyone. I know there's a great deal of stress about whether you're going to, make ends meet. But again, this goes back to the Ikigai, does it make money? And the other parts of the work of a job, say, should be about whether you're good at it, about whether the world needs it, and maybe especially whether you like it or not. So I was curious about this worthy use of leisure time as an educational concept and did some research on how it survived over the decades in dialogues among educational leaders, among principals and superintendents. And I did some literature review on it and found that all of these 7 categories has some continuity of discussion from 1918, when the cardinal principles were first established, to now. Even though the wording might have changed, even though the phraseology may have been updated, all of them have some sort of pedigree, some sort of continuity of discussion among educational leaders, all except for one, and that is the worthy use of leisure time. So what happened to the worthy use of leisure time? I mean, did it change in phraseology? Nah, I didn't see that it did. Now, maybe my research isn't exhaustive, but I did look on educational database to see what sort of dialogues there are that use this term. And the last thing I found was a paper that was published in 1965. This paper, A School's Responsibility, Worthy Use of Leisure Time, by Phyllis Lieberman and Sidney Simon. So, so I don't know, 40 years ago. 1964. So 1964. Now this is really curious because what this paper is a short paper, and it's just sort of a suggestion on how to use journaling as a way to be conscientious about how leisure time is being used. So, a nice little lesson plan or instruction for teachers. That's what most of this paper is. But I want to read to you the first paragraph of this paper. This is 1964. You ready for this? It says, people outside of education are increasingly recognizing that sooner or later, automation and computers will mean shorter working hours and greater leisure for most, if not all, of the American people. Bruce Bliven, in a recent article in the New York Times Saturday magazine, states the position clearly. He reports that 100 years ago, the average work week in the U.S. was about 70 hours. Today it is about 40 hours, and experts say that in the next decade or so, it will be cut again. The predictions ranging from 37 hours down to 20 or even less. This reduction might come as a shorter work day, or fewer work days per week, or longer, very much longer vacations. First paragraph, 1964. So, in some perspective, so some of you might have heard the name John Maynard Keynes. He was a British economist whose heyday was in the 1930s, and he informed much of the policies that we consider stimulus policies of the FDR administration and similar projects or policies in England. The idea, he'd studied a business cycle pretty deeply and noticed all these boom and bust cycles. And he's the one who sort of engineered the idea of having stimulus, having sort of deficit spending during times of depression or prolonged recession, and to avoid going through a deep cycle, having recessions turn into depressions and having nobody, find work and having production just sort of grind to a halt, and get out of that. So borrowing your way out of that through stimulus, getting people to work. But then on the upside, when times are good, of recovering some of the revenues that are earned through taxes, and then, sort of saving up a rainy day fund. And this resulting Keynesian economics became sort of orthodox practice, and still is. So the sort of the dominant orthodox theory of macroeconomics is Keynesian. Well, Keynes, he witnessed in his lifetime some pretty amazing transformations of agriculture, from being just the most labor-intensive source of production. Pulling a plow is not easy work, to mechanization of the agricultural sector, and the per labor unit productivity just skyrocketing. I mean, manifold increase in productivity for the same amount of unit labor. That's one person per labor hour, for example. So he saw this as an upward trending arc. And why not? Why not see this as an upward trending arc? I mean, we're inventive people. We have all these gizmos that are labor-saving devices. In 1930, Keynes predicted that by this time, 2030, increases in productivity and technology, computers and automation, for example, would yield to us a 15-hour work week. 15-hour work week. So my question is, why not? Why aren't we working a 15-hour work week? Why aren't we developing an economy that encourages the kind of automation that gives us the basic human needs, remember, the fundamental human needs from an earlier video, and can provide these for us with such increased efficiency that we don't need to toil? I wouldn't mind toiling for 15 hours. I do that already. I do that. Many of us do that well beyond this. I mean, I can move wheelbarrows and move rocks and do all kinds of things that in my youth I developed a pretty strong back, so I can still use that physical labor. I can, set up spreadsheets and do some tedious accounting, filing taxes and that sort of thing that none of us really get paid for unless you're a professional tax filer. So we I'm not averse to toil. I'm not averse to labor. I'm just not a fan of excessive live-to-work labor. Who is? Who should be? So the question is, why don't we build that economy? Why don't we set up, since economies are an invention, and they don't just fall from the sky, we as in organizations of people, including governments, design various structures to make economies work certain ways. Now that we're in our little transformative time here where we have so much time to think about things, I suppose, during this pandemic. One of the things I certainly expect we will think about more is the economy, what it means, who it's for, and what it should look like. So I would propose that we develop an economy that allows us to realize this goal of, say, a 15-hour work week, and incentivize the kinds of innovation and invention that will automate some of the necessary fundamental human needs that we all desire. So that's my little vlog for the day. And so this is April 5th. And once again, my name is Eben Rose. I'm running for Maine State Senate. And if you go to my website, ebenrose.com, I'm a clean elections candidate, which requires $5 donations, 175 individual $5 donations. Please go to the website. If you like what you see, click on the button there. It will direct you to the state website where you can make these contributions. And I will continue to make these video logs or vlogs and continue to make signs. Thank you very much. Be well, be safe. Good night.